Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In this episode, I'm going to demonstrate to you how you can change the IP address on a Raspberry Pi. I've got a Raspberry Pi 3 Model B attached to my network, and I have set the IP address as a static IP address. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to SSH into the Raspberry Pi using my PowerShell tool, or you can use your command prompt if you like. Okay, so SSH, this is my username, which is always Ubuntu is always the standard or default username, followed by the IP address of your Raspberry Pi, right? When you hit enter, they'll prompt you for your password. So normally the default password is Ubuntu as well, but I've already set up my password to be something else. And I'm entering the password here, and as soon as I'm done, here. So I'm in Ubuntu. Show you what release I have with Ubuntu. This is 20.04. If you look at my IP address, this is the IP address or the network devices that I have. So the one that I'm communicating via would be let me make it slightly smaller so that everything can fit in there, would be the ETH0, this guy here, and the IP address is that, right? I'll show you where you can set them up. So before you do that, you're gonna have to navigate to go to etc Netplan and hit enter. That's where your configuration file is. It's a YAML file, this guy here. You can open using any of your text editor. So if I want to edit this guy here, I would have to go as a super user, and I'm using a nano as a text editor, followed by the file name. Hit enter, and this is what a typical configuration for a static IP address looks like. It starts off with network. It has to start off with a network because the YAML file pertains to network. The version is the version of a Netplan. This version here generally is 2, right? If you want to change this to other version, I'm not too sure what the impact is. If you do know, please leave a comment. On this renderer here, there's 2 types of renderer. There's network D, and there's also, I'm just gonna type it here so that you can see it. Sorry. There's 2 types, network D and network manager, like that, right? Network D is targeted towards a newer version of the OS, mostly along the line of server installation, but network manager is targeted towards desktop installation. It's for the older version of an OS. I've always had many lucks with using network D. That's why I've always used as network. D is actually network manager. Network manager, like that, right? So I would stick with network D if I were you. Okay, followed by the Ethernet here, the heading, which is indicating the Ethernet blocks, and from here on you can specify all your devices. So my device I'm specifying here is ETH1, which is my Ethernet 1, right? And then on this DHCP, I've set as no, right? I'm disabling the DHCP client on this Raspberry Pi. If you want this to be DHCP version, I'll show you towards the end of the video here. The next one, once you say no, the next entry would be the address itself, right? So this is a private network, right? So I'm set up IP address as 192.168.50.89/24, followed by gateway, right? You need a gateway because you are not using a DHCP server. So this is the gateway of my router in my home, right? And followed by the name server block, right? The name server, I've basically used the IP address of a Google DNS. You can use the same one. They are very reliable, and most of the time it works, right? So once you said and done, this is what it looks like. So on the on this nano, right? They say over here, they say Control X to exit. When you press Control X, they'll prompt you if you want to save this content. Say yes, and then the file name is hit enter. So if you were to log in without nano, without the sudo user, they will tell you that it's unwritable, right? So any changes that you make will not be saved. So that's what it looks like. So once that's done, the next thing you want to do would be sudo netplan apply. So essentially what it does with that is that it applies all the changes that you made to that 50 cloud init.yaml file. You hit enter. I might lose connection here because I'm connected through SSH connection, so they will reset the network. Okay, I was lucky, I guess. So once that's done, it will tell you successful or something like that, or sometimes most of the OS they will tell you nothing, right? And then to check your IP address, you don't have to power cycle at all. Just type IP addr, and then you should see that your IP address changing in here, right? That's how you do it. So I did promise you that I will show you how to change the IP address to be DHCP. So you go to sudo nano, which is my text editor, followed by the YAML file name. And then if you want to make this into a DHCP, you have to delete all this line. Control K on the nano to delete the line, or rather cut, like that. And then over here you would type yes, and of course you press Control X, save it, and then exit. And then after that, once that's done, you do sudo net apply again, and then you will have a DHCP server issuing an IP address to your Ethernet card. Okay, so last two more things, I guess. When you do ls on this one here, you see how my YAML file name is 50-cloud init. Every different version of Raspberry Pi I've worked in my past life, they all seems to be a different file name. So don't be afraid if you see one cloud init or one cloud.yaml or something like that. This is the file that you have to modify. And lastly, if I type IP addr, you do see that I have two Wi-Fi card, right? And they are down. So which means they are not set up on my YAML file. You do the same thing with your Wi-Fi card as well if you want to modify them. I hope this tutorial was helpful. If it is, please like and subscribe. Other than that, have a good day. Bye now.